Call to order the Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, December 19th, 2019. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Harker, please call the roll.
Here.
Commissioner Bradley.
Here.
Commissioner Geisler.
Here.
Commissioner Schmolke.
Here.
Commissioner Casey.
Here.
Chair Schwartz.
Here.
And Commissioner Heikela is absent tonight.
Our first order of business this evening is to adopt our agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Agenda's been adopted. Next, we have approve our minutes from the November 21st meeting.
I'll move to approve the minutes from the November 21st meeting.
Second.
Motion by Schmolke, second by Knobloch. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain? And the minutes are approved with Chair Schwartz abstain. Our first order of new business, planning case 19-25, a conditional use permit for limited production and processing at 4101 Coon Rapids Boulevard, Aero Technologies. Mr. Harlicker.
Good evening, Commissioners. Chair. The first item that's up for tonight is a request for a conditional use permit for a limited production and processing facility at 4101 Coon Rapids Boulevard. The applicant is proposing to utilize a vacant building here at 4101 Coon Rapids Boulevard. They'll be moving their business there, which is, for zoning purposes, is classified as a limited production and processing, which in this port requires a conditional use permit. Excuse me. The applicant is proposing to move into the building here, which was constructed in 1979. It's 24,197 square feet. It used to house the ACM newspaper publishing facility. There is a second building on site here, which is currently occupied. It's used by ACM as their office building. If the commission recalls, a couple months ago, the city approved an RLS that split this property into two pieces, with the old production facility on one site and the office on another. Aero Technologies is a company that assembles, tests, and stocks components such as valves, regulators, and controls used in the semiconductor, biomedical, and pharmaceutical industries. The business utilizes clean rooms, ultrasound cleaning systems, helium leak detectors, and particle counters in their operations. The applicant will be modifying the existing building to include a shop area, a clean room, and office area. This is the proposed layout with the shop area in purple, the clean room in red, and the green area here is the proposed office area. The applicant is not proposing to make any changes to the site. Initially, the applicant will have one shift that will run from 6:30 to 3:30 p.m. with a possible second shift in a couple years. Current employee count is 30 with a potential 15 employees over the next couple years. Staff did compare the proposal to the conditional use permit standards found in section 11-304.3 and found that it was met those conditions. I'd like to discuss, however, the traffic. Truck traffic will not increase from their current counts at their new site. They currently have under 8 trucks, semis per week, generally less than 2 to 4 trucks per day. They have 68 daily delivery vans and a company truck that will come and go a couple times a day. Delivery times are between 7:30 a.m. and 4 p.m. The applicant did speak with ECM and got traffic counts from when that facility was in operation. ECM had, according to their report, had 10 to 15 semi-trucks and 6 to 8 delivery trucks per day. And the applicant will actually have less traffic coming into and out of the site than ECM did at their peak operation. The proposed use requires 1 parking space per 1,000 square feet. The building at 24,000 square feet requires 25 parking spaces. There are 63 parking spaces provided on this site. However, as part of the condition of approval for their registered land survey, there will have to be a parking and access agreement between the 2 parcels that allows for cross parking and access to Tract A across Tract B. The entrance to the site is here, which is actually on Tract B. Another traffic issue that should be discussed tonight is truck access into and out of the site. City code limits parking coming into driveways and loading areas to coming in to the loading area first. It states that all parking, driving, open storage, and loading areas be designed so that any vehicle entering or leaving the site is traveling forward. In this case, there's 2 options for truck traffic to access this loading dock right here. You can come in off of Coon Rapids Boulevard, which at this point, we're not certain that that's a makeable maneuver. The other option would be, and what has, according to ECM, has historically been the way trucks accessed this loading area here, would be to back in off of 119th. That maneuver there is inconsistent with the requirement that vehicles entering the loading area be moving forward. Historically, according to ECM, that's how the semis have accessed this loading bay here, is coming in off of here. Coming in off of Coon Rapids Boulevard might require some modifications to the parking area, specifically at this point here. When this building was originally constructed, one of the conditions of approval was to soften or widen up the turning radius off of 119th to allow truck traffic in, and same thing off of 100 and off of Coon Rapids Boulevard. And you can see, it's not clear on the air photo, but the turning radius at this point here and the right turn in off of Coon Rapids Boulevard have both been widened to better accommodate truck traffic into the site. The applicant is here and would like to speak to that issue. Staff is offering one option to address that issue, that being that included in the parking and access agreement language be included that allows the applicant to make alterations to the traffic flow that will better facilitate traffic, truck traffic into the site. This access here is actually on Track B and is not strictly under the control of the applicant. That would have to be included in the parking and access agreement. With that, I'll answer questions, and the applicant would like an opportunity to speak to the commission.
Commission, any questions for Mr. Harlicker?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Geisler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Harlicker, so let me clarify with that last point. Is staff recommending that that become a part of approval for this conditional use permit, that the alterations to traffic flow be required, or that the applicant should consider that?
Well, that'd be an option for them. At this point, we're not sure if trucks, they haven't done a test to see how trucks could maneuver in here. That seems to be a rather tight turn. Once you get in, it looks like trucks can make the maneuver to get here and back in. But that main entrance off of Coon Boulevard appears to be the choke point.
So would you characterize that more as a conversation that you're having with the applicant versus a requirement?
It's a conversation that the applicant would like to have with the commission tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Casey?
Mr. Harlicker was so, yeah, like fire trucks, have they had problems with that kind of maneuver off of Coon Rapids Boulevard?
At this point, no. I'm assuming that when the new office building was constructed, there was a condition that access be approved by the fire department.
So it's big enough for a fire truck to maneuver, we're thinking.
I would think so. I
Yeah,
don't know for
but
certain
maybe
if
not for
that's
the semis.
what kind of truck they were looking at maneuvering through there.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mr. Harlicker, has the ordinance changed since ECM went into the building in '79?
I went back as far as 1982. It was in the 1982 ordinance. I did not have access there. I'd go back prior to that.
Because if ECM routinely backed their trucks in, it was an ordinance that wasn't enforced back then?
That's a
Apparently.
possibility.
Chair Schwartz, I learned this afternoon that the prior owner actually had, when this was all done initially, the loading dock was at grade. It's currently below grade. And so really the only option as it is now is creating the issue we're talking about. The ordinance does require any loading to enter the loading area going forward and leave going forward. So we're interpreting that as off the street. And under its old layout, when it was at grade, you certainly could have accomplished that.
I see. All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Schmolke?
So, Mr. Harlicker, I apologize if I missed this, but are we saying then that the semis are currently coming in off of 119th though? Is that what you said?
According to the current property owner, yes, the applicant did speak with them, so maybe they can better answer that question.
Okay, so both businesses would be restricted from continuing that practice going forward? If
With the office building, there isn't
won't
a
have-
lot of truck traffic
they
coming
won't
into
have
that.
truck traffic.
They do have their own separate driveway coming in off of 119th at this location here.
Okay,
So any deliveries could come in, drop their stuff out, and go back out the same way they came in.
got it.
Mr. Harlicker, would it be possible, since they're gonna have all these cross easements and what have you, would be for Aero Technologies to have their semis come in through the office buildings driveway back there and then cut across and then back in?
The as-built is deceiving. There's a 4-foot drop. It's a recessed loading bay. And those are retaining walls on either side of it. So
Okay.
there's no room on this side. There is room on this side to get out, but this is totally blocked.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Harlicker at this time? Petitioners, like to, petitioners like to make a presentation, please come up to the microphone, give your name and address for the record, please.
Yep, right there.
I'm Dan Haskins. Address is 8950 Evergreen Boulevard is where we're at right now in Coon Rapids. And that's Aerotech is what we call our company. It's actually a division of Aero Tank and Engineering who's been there since, I think, 72 or 73. So that's over in 8950 in the Evergreen Park back there. I think Scott's done a pretty good job of describing what's going on. Looking at this thing, this is the issue for us. We have to be able to access it. I guess Wayne, you mentioned perhaps going in through the back and using that entrance and going around. If we could remove some sods and make it essentially the same as the abutting on the other side. If you look at like right here, Scott, if we were able to come in here, whoop, I touched it. You gotta watch me. Sorry about that. But if you go, if you would come in and make a U and then back into the driveway and then back in, what you were saying is actually true if we didn't have the big barriers. But we've got two barriers on either side and it's a drive-in dock, which we need to have for our business. We need to have one drive-in and we have one drive-in and we actually want one backup that's right at the load, at the semi-load level. And that's what's going on. But at both sides of that drive-in is big barriers, so you can't get by. So if we could remove, something and enlarge the parking lot back there to just be the same width as what it is on my property, or what would be my property, we could perhaps drive a truck through and make that U and then back in, from the 119th. I don't see us being able to go through the front without having issues quite often with trucks coming in from Coon Rapids Boulevard. I don't see that as a very good option at all. I don't own the property either. It's kind of a strange place to be. I'm looking at this and saying, if I do leave, what happens with resale if I ever sold this building? Can I do anything with this? And so there has to be some continuations too. If we do something and we can get it approved, it's gonna have to be approved for the next person and the next person. We're a lot less in trucks than what was there now. We don't expect to be more than 10, a week. Honestly, I put 10 to 12, and I think we'll still be within that for years to come, honestly, if this thing works. But I've got to be able to come in off of that street and then back in. I don't see it working coming from the front. You mentioned fire trucks. I don't know the length of a standard fire truck, but it's a little shorter than a semi. And if you have the one that's a hook and ladder, you've got a wheel back in the back, and they can actually steer the back around a corner. So I don't see that this is an easy thing to do. We could perhaps remove a bump out on the parking lot in the front, and here again, it's their property, the next door. I have to ask them if they would allow that, or we'd have to make a change in the back in order to not back up off of a city street and back into the loading area.
Have you had any conversations with the other tenant? About
They are the
either of
ones
those
that are
changes?
essentially trying to sell this property. So yes, we've asked them what did they do, and Chris sent them a note, and they answered saying that they did come off of 119th with semis. So it's been just kind of ignored. I don't know. They didn't come from the front, is the way it sounded. Very rarely did they do that.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Go ahead, Commissioner Bradley.
I was wondering, Mr. Haskins and Mr. Harlicker, would they be able to, on that north side of the lot farther west, south side of the lot farther west, I'm all turned around here. I don't know where, back up here.
Well,
Is it?
the main entrance on is actually facing north, so where you have the drive-in
Okay.
dock,
Is the south?
that's, south is the other end facing Coon Rapids Boulevard.
Okay.
So what you're thinking is
Yes.
possibly put in another drive up there?
Possibly, yeah, you'd end up sacrificing some parking, but you could maybe at the, back by the loading dock, farther into the corner, add another entrance so that you had have a kind of a U that you could use? Or-
I'm
Is that-
sorry, I was looking at the screen over here, and I, to make a U like on, totally on our side, on the west side, is that what you're saying?
I'm suggesting adding another entrance off of 119th,
Yep,
Further to the west.
further to the west, that's what I was thinking he was saying, yes.
And is that feasible?
Yes, I certainly, if it's within the, you know, you guys within the city's, you know, understanding and the city's rules, yes.
And Mr. Harlicker, would you address what your thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, I was
Okay,
trying to fix this here.
Coming in from here and coming around and in, so just putting another entrance here.
Off the northwest corner.
Yeah, it would probably work if you'd come in. You have to flatten that out probably a little bit.
Right.
I don't,
Right. You know, you're
there'd be
you're
some
losing.
stormwater
you're losing-
management.
You're losing probably some, you could lose 10
You'd
parking
lose
spots
some
as well.
trees, yeah, and parking stalls.
But, and that's, there's already a U that's there on the east side, coming in over their property. We were just talking about perhaps making a sloughed-off corner where it goes in and just kind of creating more of an area there where the semi could make the turn.
yeah.
And
Sure,
that
sure.
just creates a little more asphalt, but it's, if that makes sense.
Chair Schwartz,
Commissioner Knobloch?
I have a question. Is there an option to make a design modification in the building to accommodate a different loading dock at a different angle of the building? Because that might be more cost-effective than landscaping and putting in.
I
Truck capable.
don't see that as a
No.
very strong possibility at first glance. I think that what was discussed as far as just going west of there and making your own U-turn would probably give you access to this, you know, just working on our side of the property. If you put an entrance anywhere else that is dock height, so you can just back a semi in and just run a forklift in and out, that type of thing. I don't see that being a very strong option anywhere else on this facility because you've got the turnaround issue no matter what you do there. The most clear path is off 119th and making a U-turn and coming back. Or just doing it on the street, but that's obviously not acceptable to this situation.
Commissioner Geisler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would actually tend to agree with the applicant here that the quote-unquote island between the two existing drive aisles, if the southern curb of that island were brought closer to 119th, so move north, would create a much more natural flow with less disturbance to the existing land.
Just go there.
My hesitancy here of solutioning in the middle of the meeting is that requires the other occupant of tract B to weigh in. I think if that option were put in front of us, it would be much easier for us to consider, but without the other party here, I think we're gonna have a hard time solving this within our 60-day rule. But I do think that that's the least disruptive to the community and the most advantageous change to this site is to adjust that island that exists on both tracts of land that is shared by nature. I guess I would, my question to the applicant would be, would you be willing to go back to talk to the other property and come delay your application a little bit to get that plan in front of staff and have a holistic plan in front of us so we could just go through with that?
Throw a couple things on that.
And you come up and give your name.
In short, I guess I would say to you that I believe that that's certainly doable. In discussions we've had with the neighbors so far, They're selling the building, so they'd like to do it, to do something to get the building sold, and I think they're gonna struggle, so I'll turn it over to Chris.
Chris Wyons, I'm with Cushman & Wakefield. I represent Dan as his real estate agent and trying to find him a new home. Address 3500 American Boulevard in Bloomington. But as far as the easement goes, or just the parking in general, and you guys, it sounds like you're very familiar with what's been going on here and doing the lot split and everything else. They have already proactively presented to us, so we're in the midst of negotiating a purchase agreement to move forward, put the property under contract, and do our due diligence, but they've already have put in front of us two easement agreement language that is in front of Dan's attorney as well. And so and it's specifically for the front of the property on Coon Rapids Boulevard, but they know very well that this is an irregular shaped property and that there's gonna have to be something done regarding loading and easements and sharing of the parking lot. So I think I'm not speaking for them, but we're really negotiating that right now with them, and I would think they would say that that's definitely on the table to not only have some type of easement language regarding the Coon Rapids Boulevard, but also in the back too, to solve Dan's loading situation.
If I may follow up.
Commissioner Geisler?
Thank you, Chris.
Sure. Just to clarify, as far as the 60-day rule goes, it looks like that's going to time out about a week before our next meeting here. So in order for the applicant to have time to come back and to not have us run into that, how would we go about requesting that, or would the applicant request a delay such that to be able to come back with a completed plan with the other party?
I see two paths, Mr. Commissioner. Mr. Chair, can I answer that question? The first is we can give notice to the applicant. We're extending an additional 60 days to 120 total. And then I also have a suggestion where you could add a condition. And the specific ordinance we're talking about is 11-1202.2. And you could just make as a condition compliance with that. As I understand, there's a little bit of a historical context here where this body had a similar issue on a different property before my time. It went to council, and the applicant discussed it with council as well.
Follow-up question for you then, sir. Since this is a decision by the planning commission and wouldn't go to council, we cannot approve the violation of an existing ordinance, correct?
Correct. So that was, the ordinance we're talking about is the one I said, and then they could appeal this body's decision on that specific issue if they wanted to.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Commissioner Geisler?
So if I may just reword that slightly, if we were to add a condition that the applicant provide an updated plan that was compliant with 11-1202.2, that could also be sufficient in a way with such adjustments that staff were approval, and if staff felt it had to come back to the body, they could provide notice to the applicant for an extension to then come back and visit at a later date? Or do we have to provide the notice at this meeting tonight?
Well, so, it's kind of a one or the other thing. I think you were
Gotcha.
onto that, where we're either gonna extend it or we're gonna make it a condition, but let's not do both.
Okay, understood.
Anything else that you'd like to provide at this time then?
I'm sorry?
Anything else that you need to add?
As far as the timing, it's unfortunate. Perhaps my fault. I'm not really certain what to say. I kind of learned this fairly late in this process, a couple, 2-3 days ago, honestly, that this was going to be a problem to actually come off of the street and plan on it. I wrote a letter 2 months ago saying that I didn't see it to be feasible coming from the other way. But there really wasn't any discussion of the actual rules of the city of Coon Rapids to say that you can't turn around or you can't back into a spot. I just found that out 3 days ago. So I apologize for wasting your time with coming not prepared, but I didn't have a lot of information with that. So I would like to certainly press forward and do the best we could and see if we can do this, because if this doesn't happen, I've got to start over. I can do a lot of things, but I don't have that much time. I'm running out.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're purchasing the property, once you've purchased the property, you could always add that westerly driveway coming in off of, what is it, 119th back there?
I don't disagree with that. I think that's absolutely true, Mr. Chairman. At this point, if that's doable, it's certainly another choice to make.
Mr. Chair, the only concern I have about with that too, because I just feel like we're introducing some additional problems here. When we discussed that, there's the potential though that you could lose parking spaces, right? And
Yes.
so then the issue,
Yes.
now you still have to work with the other party to then, again, on the parking spaces, I don't know if they're going to be in agreement to that either. Is what we're discussing here something though that will help you to go back and maybe even get some of your own questions answered so that you would feel more comfortable if you come back in 30 days then to present the full? Because you're talking about, it's like you've only known about this for 2 days. I certainly appreciate, the uncomfort, the discomfort of trying to commit to something when you don't have all the facts.
All of these points are fair, Madam Chair. I don't know what to say as far as that's concerned, other than the fact that I'm not on someone else's property
Right.
if I do what's proposed this way. If I go west of that and make a loop through, I could certainly stay on what is now my property. If I don't, and I went to the other way, went to the east and asked if we could have an easement there, which I'm a little uncomfortable with easements. They say they last forever, but, if I wanted to sell this building to somebody, are they gonna be comfortable with that same easement? This has to be a saleable type, building as well. So I'm struggling with that. But I think, to your question, we could do this on our own property if we were allowed. I didn't know if the city would allow that to take place. If that's possible, then we could certainly avoid having to have an additional easement or additional discussions. The parking spaces, you are absolutely correct. We would probably lose, at least 10 of them. There's quite a few here. I have over 60 now. I don't see us being more than 55 people in this spot, perhaps up to 60, but that would be it. I think there's still an easement up front, and the discussion of the front is you can still use some of that parking. It's a little uncomfortable. You can't drive into your own building and have your customers park in front. It gets a little squirrely there, but we do have quite a few parking spots. So I think we could sacrifice some in the back.
Yeah, Chair, the parking requirement for this building is 25 spaces.
Correct.
And I have about, the way it looks right now, I was just looking at it, looks like I'm 70, 67.
Yep.
Our report says 63 are provided.
Well, there might be on that cutoff on the way that the property is kind of at that angle. You may lose a couple there, so that would make sense.
So if you've got 63 provided and you were going to lose 10 putting in that other driveway, you're still at 53, which is well in excess of 25 required.
Yeah, with your requirement per foot, per footage, sure. I think we'd be okay with that number.
Mr. Harlicker, would we be best to extend the 60-day rule to allow the petitioner to further look into the westerly driveway, whether the city is going to authorize or would have any objections to putting in that westerly driveway?
I mean, Chair, you could certainly do that. It's like City Attorney said, it is within the commission's purview to extend that 60 days. I don't know how that plays in with the applicant's purchase agreement with the property. Then that would give them an opportunity to come up with design for that second access off of 119th.
You know, I personally, I would be much more comfortable having that answered before we completed our business. Commissioner Geisler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I'm looking at an aerial photo here, and that center, that drive, the island between the two existing driveways is barren. There is no parking to it. It's just grass right now. And looking at the rough grading plan, it's basically flat as well. If that were brought up to the existing tree line, it would allow a truck to take a left turn in and make a right turn out and would not disrupt the houses across the street. If we put in a third driveway, if the applicant were to put in a third driveway here, we're looking at 4 driveways in the span of 5 properties across the street. It would make that pretty disruptive for the neighboring properties there. While I do think that a westerly drive aisle works, and it is fully on the track that the applicant is seeking, speaking to the nature of both of these parcels being integral to each other pretty much for perpetuity's sake, I think the permanent adjustment on both parcels, because they both own part of that island, the way the lots are currently divided, I think that's the most efficient use. I do think, though, that requires a little more work and a little more time, so a delay would allow them to pursue that. But I think that makes the best plan for the long-term use of these parcels.
I understand what you're saying, sir, and I think, I don't have a good answer as to what the neighbor would do necessarily, but I will certainly, I would like to discuss all of this with them very quickly. Perhaps there's a purchase of a parcel of land for that island. They're not using it. Right now, there's a fence that keeps you from going that way.
Right.
And if they were willing and I could, swap, they took away the front of my building, maybe they'll give me the back. It's not gonna affect their parking. They're not gonna give me, but there's some negotiations here that perhaps could be talked about. I mean, it doesn't help them in any way, shape, or form, that piece of land. And if I could do what you're saying and buy that piece of land, just make it an L-shaped configuration or something in this process, perhaps that would make sense.
Or just going back to the fact that the lot split has already been created, it's 2 separate parcels, or will be 2 separate parcels soon enough. There has to be an easement agreement in place for the front, no matter what. And, I mean, in all honesty, if it's not Dan buying this building, the next group will have a loading situation too. So to avoid stormwater, part of our negotiation that needs to occur with the seller is that we need an easement agreement to go across their property on the south side too, to access the loading dock. And then just for our sake, and I'll let Dan ask or confirm, but I would ask that the loading be added in as a condition rather than extending this out another 60 days. Unfortunately, time is not on our side.
Yeah, I will agree with that. I can't, well, I say can't, it's a hard word, obviously, at this point, but 60 days, I'm moving 2 businesses. I'm trying to move another one into Coon Rapids Boulevard, where I'm at right now, and I was gonna move that business here. So I've got some deadlines with some landlords and such that are coming into play for my time frame.
So in other words, we need to figure out how to do the loading correctly and not load, or do the loading backing in off the street. And it's gonna occur by trying to negotiate this easement agreement with the seller. And I guess we would ask that just be made a condition in receiving a conditional use permit.
Is that possible?
That was one of our 2 options.
I
I
can't make
I look
motions.
to the city attorney.
Yes, I think if you made that a condition, you're not violating any laws, if that's what this body wants to do. If the body wants to table it, it's free to do that as well. Because that's the appropriate thing to do. Or you can also deny the permit and they can appeal it to council.
All right. I know we're talking a 60-day extension, but really, we're talking a 30-day extension to go to next month's meeting, so that you have time to work things out with the other property owner, so that we would have a final decision as far as whether you're gonna be able to get that easement back there or not. Is a 30-day gonna affect your contract?
Our next meeting is January 16th, right?
Right.
So we'll miss the January 16th, is what you're saying.
No,
So it'd be-
we would put this
That's what
to
would
the
be
January
tabled
16th
to.
meeting.
Okay.
So we're not really talking 60 days,
Okay.
we're really talking 30 days.
Okay.
It's just that the 60-day rule is extended 60 days because that's the topic, or that's the language used by the extension.
Yes, I think that we should be able to come to some terms, I think, within that time frame and get within the 30 days and see if we can figure it out. I certainly would like the opportunity to try. If it doesn't work, we can certainly cancel this at that point, but I would certainly like to try that, yes.
Is that sufficient time, Mr. Harlifer, to get them on for the next meeting?
Oh, yes.
In January?
Yep.
To extend it then? I think I'd be most comfortable with that.
Because that would give us a
More information.
definitive answer as to what's gonna happen to those trucks back there.
Correct.
There's a great deal of back and forth negotiation taking place right now with lawyers and easement agreements and everything else.
Certainly.
This is all new to me. I've never done this before. I've only been in one place for my entire career. Been right here in Coon Rapids for 33 years with this job. And I've never done this, so to me, it looks like it's possible. I don't know if they're receptive. I don't know what we can come up with, but we'll try it and see if we can get it done.
All right? It sounds like a plan. We have to open a public hearing here tonight, but I think the consensus here is that we would continue this case to next month's meeting.
Correct.
Just table it.
That gives us the most information to operate with, the most eye on the subject, of how it would work out, and gives you time to negotiate with your neighbor.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
I would certainly like to make it, give that a try. This, to me, is a pretty fair solution. Certainly if it can be tied into something that can be passed on to the next owner, if there is one, which there may or may not be. My son wants to buy the business, so we'll see, but we'll go from there.
All right. At this time, I will then open a public hearing in planning case 19-25, a conditional use permit for limited production and processing at 4101 Coon Rapids Boulevard, Aero Technologies. Anyone wishing to speak to the public hearing on this matter? All right, we will leave open the public hearing and continue it to next month's meeting pending the outcome of our vote here. Is there a motion by commission? Commissioner Geisler.
Mr. Chair, I move that we table planning case 1925 at this time,
I'll second.
To January 16th meeting.
to January 16th meeting, yes. Let's accept that amendment.
And the second was
I'll second.
Schmolke. Motion by Geisler, second by Schmolke to continue this case to the January 16th, 2020 meeting.
Mr. Chair, one quick question. By giving a date in that motion, though, if they actually needed the full 60 days, does that hinder them in any way?
Well, at this point, we would bring it up on next month's meeting, and
Okay.
if they needed an additional time to continue,
Then we
we
would
could
just-
continue from next month
Thank
to
you.
the next month. All right, we have the motion and the second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So it's continued then to next month's meeting.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Thanks.
And Mr. Harlick, are you gonna be able to get the equipment?
Well, I think we're gonna have to go with the overhead projector. If we could get that turned on, please. Switched over.
It was flashing there when you would touch the
It-
back of it, but
something's-
it,
yeah.
oh, there, it's back.
Yeah, we've
No,
got
it's
the overhead
not.
projector.
That is overhead.
Oh. Never mind.
Technology.
All right, then our second case this evening is planning case 19-26, a PUD amendment for a site plan consisting of a retail building and a bank at 3211 Northdale Boulevard, Kimley-Horn. Mr. Harlicker.
All right. Please excuse the delay here. The property is located, it's apparently was Famous Dave's, and the property is highlighted here in yellow. Got Menards is here, McDonald's, Costco, Northdale Boulevard, and Main Street on the south. The applicant is proposing to amend the PUD to construct two buildings on the site. Where'd it go? There we go. One building is a 7,000 square foot multi-tenant building, which is here. Possible tenants include, they've got a proposed restaurant at this location, proposed veterinary clinic here, and then a bank down at this corner here. The bank is 3,850 square feet. Access to the site is being adjusted slightly so it lines up better with the McDonald's access across this private drive that comes in off of Northdale Boulevard. You've got the parking here. Total number of spaces required is 57. They're proposing 66. The bank will not have a drive-through window, but it will have an outside ATM at this location here. So cars will likely come in, go to the ATM, and then exit out. The front of the proposed bank is here and can be used by the parking field here. As you can see, most of the parking is opposite the larger building. The dumpster enclosure is at this location here. Go over access and parking. They'll be utilizing the shared access coming in off of Northdale Boulevard with a single lane in and then a left and right turn going out. This drive is a private drive going out onto Northdale Boulevard. This intersection here was identified in a Riverdale area traffic study that was done, and it was identified as a poorly functioning intersection that should be addressed. This proposed development will be increasing traffic out onto this private drive. So staff has been in discussions with the applicant, and a traffic study was done to assess the project's impact on this intersection. And the traffic study identified improvements that should be made to this intersection. Those improvements include signalized intersection, better striping on the access drive going out, improved ADA and pedestrian access, and a possible right turn in northbound on Northdale Boulevard. That'll be finalized as part of a development agreement with the applicant, and that will include a cost-sharing agreement between the city and the applicant. Other than that, the traffic study did not have any issues with the internal flow of the traffic. This is the grading plan here. You can see the stormwater infiltration basin is located up here to the north. There is some rather steep grades along Northdale Boulevard. The applicant is proposing a sidewalk coming in from Northdale. The city engineer has indicated that the steps will not be allowed out here. That will necessitate reconfiguring that sidewalk, or maybe the elimination of that sidewalk. There is a second access into the site from an existing sidewalk that kind of loops around the back of the building. That accommodates the grade change and makes it ADA compliant. It'll swing around and up through here. Staff is recommending that a sidewalk be included along the east side of the building here. That will connect with Main Street. Put a crosswalk here so people can come from Main Street across here and gain access to this building. That way there'll be at least one pedestrian access from Northdale and one pedestrian access from Main Street. There's a bike rack shown here by the bank. Staff is also recommending that one be provided at the north end of the building. Looking at the landscaping, we'll start along Northdale Boulevard. The applicant is actually increasing the number of street trees along here. They're also providing a shrub hedge along Northdale. They're doing the same thing along Main Street. They're increasing the number of trees and also providing a hedge. The landscaped islands and peninsulas are landscaped with overstory and ornamental trees and shrubs, depending on the size of the island and peninsula. Around the dumpster enclosure, we've got vertical arborvitae along here with some ornamentals and grasses here. They're proposing evergreen trees along here to help screen it from the cars coming in, as well as some ornamental trees, excuse me, out along the private drive. The engineering memo is also suggesting that a sidewalk be provided across this main drive aisle here, because you'll have cars coming in, ATM cars and other cars coming out that way, so that could be a safety concern. The exact location has not been determined, but that can be worked out prior to the issuance of a building permit. Building elevations should be here. These here are the building elevations for the bank building. There'll be a mix of a dark ephes across the top, then a brick finish here with a stone base, and then a burnished block on the foundation. The area around the entrance will be a lighter ephes with an awning coming out, aluminum awning with glass entry there. And this is the east elevation. That would be this elevation here. You've got the glass where the office building is. Again, the same materials are used on all four sides. With the exception here, they've got a fiberboard, cement fiberboard here included. South elevation, this is facing Main Street. Again, they've got the fiberboard kind of wrapping around the corner along the west and south. And same material banding with dark, ephes, the brick and the stone. So that's the bank building. They're both one-story buildings, 16 feet to 18 feet high. Here is the multi-tenant building. This is the north elevation, side facing the drive aisle, private access drive in McDonald's. You can see same type of materials. The windows do have awnings, and you got the raised parapet here to break up the roof line. They did the same roof line feature on the bank building. This is the south elevation. This faces the bank building. Again, you've got the raised parapet here. This is kind of the entrance portico, I guess, for the south tenant, which would be this entrance here. Again, this is the east elevation facing the parking lot. Awnings over the windows, the raised parapets on the entrances to kind of pull them out, and again, glass around each of the entrances, and the same exterior treatment on this side here. West elevation, again, same material with the pillars kind of breaking up the roof line, and you got a light ephes, the brick veneer, and the stone base. Along with a site plan, they're also amending the PUD. Those findings are included in the staff report. It's findings that the council will have to make in order to approve any PUD amendment. Staff included in the staff report how the proposal meets the criteria for PUD amendment. Staff is recommending that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the PUD amendment and the site plan. There are 7 conditions. Engineering comments be addressed. There's a condition that the applicant enter into a development agreement with the city, and it shall address, among other things, public infrastructure improvements and shared access to the private drive improvements, installation of a new traffic signal, ADA and sidewalk, crosswalk improvements, and the applicant shall acknowledge in that agreement about the responsibility to pay for a portion of the infrastructure improvements. Sidewalk be provided that connects with Main Street. All signage requires separate permits. PUD amendment be executed between the city and the developer. The applicant enter into a security agreement, and a bike rack be provided adjacent to the commercial building. With that, I'll answer questions, and the applicant is here to answer questions and give a brief presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Any questions for Mr. Harlicker? Commissioner Schmolke.
You mentioned the signage. Is there any monument signage currently in the plan?
Yes, Commissioner Schmolke. There is a sign proposed
Okay.
up here next to the drainage pond, and then a second one down here on Main Street in this corner here.
And how is that, how is all the trees, the shrubs and so forth spaced around that? Is it anything that would be overgrown, or is it, would it, with the increased trees and everything that they're proposing, I just wondered if that's gonna be tight, or if it's,
Well, the landscaping will be on the applicant's property, so it should not
okay.
affect the walking on the sidewalk. I'm looking for I don't see the landscape plan. There are street trees proposed along here.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's anything over here on the McDonald's site, but the landscaping can be adjusted such that the signage will be visible from Main Street.
Thank you.
And Commission, any other questions for Mr. Harlequin?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Casey?
So, Mr. Harlicker, is that drainage basin just a scooped out area? It's above ground, it's not stormwater collection underground,
Correct.
so it will have some landscaping around it? I'm too looking for the landscaping.
Yes, there is.
And
The landscaping will be more of a low growth with ornamental trees along Northdale Blvd, along the entrance here. There will be some trees along here. It's drops down fairly steep, so it's difficult to get larger landscaping in there. Along the edge, there'll be a seed, native seed mix, and then the base will be a rock mulch.
Okay. And
Chair
then
Schwartz.
I
Sorry,
had,
go ahead.
I had a question about the sidewalk. It's actually one of the conditions connecting the bank area with Main Street. Is there
Yep.
gonna be a break in there?
It would be right through here.
Let me look where you're pointing here. Okay.
And then we did
Sidewalk.
put a crosswalk across the drive aisle there, and then it would connect to the front of the commercial building.
Okay. And then also on that very west side, you're saying the stairs that are located closest to Main Street cannot
Right
be
there.
there?
Yep,
The engineer says they can't be there.
correct.
So they are eliminated as I mean, they could be moved onto the applicant's property or no?
We'd have to look and see how it's proposed. It's a pretty steep slope going down there.
Yeah.
And it would have to be approved by the engineering department, whatever new configuration they come up with.
So, does anything happen to that sidewalk connection if those steps are not provided? They're not there. So there's still sidewalk.
Well, I think if the steps go away, they'd have to reconfigure that sidewalk to accommodate the grade change. You can see on the grading plan, there is a pretty steep grade all along this
Okay.
area here. That's why this sidewalk kind of wraps around like this. It loops behind the building.
Okay.
I haven't seen another configuration. I'm not sure if that's something they could work at this end, or that would be eliminated, and then they just have the one access that would come out here, and maybe we could just provide a sidewalk extension across here to get to this building. Or they could go here, cross over at the
Crossover.
crosswalk and get to this building.
Okay. And then one other point, the steps that are down closest to the private access drive, those are gonna exist and connect with the
The
sidewalk.
steps,
around. Aren't those steps right at, just south of the basin and closer to Northdale? There are lines drawn on there like there's steps.
it says, yep, they say 6-inch risers. I'll have to let the applicant speak to that. It wasn't addressed in the city engineers. It's on private property, and I
Yeah.
think as long as an alternative access is provided on that sidewalk, the steps would probably be okay, but I defer to the engineering department on that and
Okay,
the applicant's explanation.
I think that's all I had, thank you.
Commissioner Narvelock?
The question I have for Mr. Harlicker. The development agreement, that is a very good portion I like of this PUD. Is there an estimated time for that implementation for the traffic, for the intersection?
Yeah, it would be done in conjunction with the construction of the site. The exact timing and completion date haven't been established yet.
Okay. Second question is, you mentioned 2 bike racks. Number 7 says a bike rack be provided adjacent to the commercial building.
Correct.
the commercial building in question is, which building? Is that the bank?
That's the
or
big one.
The big one,
the larger
that's
one.
the
The
restaurant
restaurant
and
and
the
the vet
veterinary
clinic.
clinic. All right. On the map, there appears to be, item Q on the legend indicates a bike rack by the bank too.
Right. I think there might be a mislabel there, but you can see them there. On here, it looks like it's labeled I.
Okay,
But to me, that looks like a bike rack, the three little lines there. Maybe the applicant can clarify that, but
yeah. It's not-
it's my interpretation that that's where the bike rack was going to be for the bank.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Casey?
one other thing. That's an iffy traffic area. We all know that's an iffy intersection. Is that a city? Northdale is a city street now, correct?
Correct, Commissioner
Not-
Casey, Northdale City.
Okay,
Just
so did
application.
we feed off of the Anoka County traffic study? Is that where this information, was it Anoka County who did a traffic study?
Nope, it was the city that contracted with SRF, who
Okay,
did the analysis for this project, and they did an overall study for all of Riverdale. And this was one of the intersections that they identified as a low-functioning intersection. that
right.
is in need of
We all know
improvements.
that.
Yeah. I mean, it was the same study that identified the main street, and that's why that driveway was shifted 100 feet to the south. That was a recommendation from that same study.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, did they say anything about the Costco entrance at all?
That is in need of improvement also, but that was kind of outside the scope
Of this?
of this
yeah.
project, yes.
But there would be a signal light.
Yep, and it would be synchronized with the signal on Main Street.
Okay, and being as it's a city street, that's why this development agreement has to be in order.
Right, between the
with
city and
And
the,
the applicants?
yep.
The applicant, yeah, okay. All right, just to clarify then.
Okay.
Commissioner Goodson?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Arco, do you know if a roundabout was contemplated there to have continuous traffic flow versus a signalized intersection?
I do not believe it was.
Okay,
Space limitations.
okay. Yeah, it is pretty tight next to the
Yeah.
Costco lot there. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Harlicker, I know for quite a while there's been talk off and on about the city putting in a traffic light at the Costco driveway. There's no way they would have a light at the Costco driveway and then another one down here.
You're
Those two
probably
would be
correct.
just too close together. Is there any way that they would be able to realign that existing driveway so it would meet at the Costco driveway?
Realign this driveway,
Yes.
not without taking out McDonald's.
Costco Drive would have to come south.
All right. Commissioner, any other questions for Mr. Harlicker at this time? Petitioners, like to make a presentation, please?
Back to old school.
Yeah. Hi, my name is John Deemer. I'm the Vice President of Construction for One Corp. We're a development company based out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, but we do development for national tenants across the country. We do developments in the suburbs of Philadelphia. We have projects and have done projects in the Bay Area in San Francisco, projects in the Florida Keys and projects in Texas. So we follow national tenants around the country, markets where they're looking to expand. Obviously, we've done projects here in the suburbs of Minneapolis. This will actually be our 20th project in the suburbs of Minneapolis, actually our third project in the city of Coon Rapids. We did the Panera Aspen Dental and Mattress Firm on Main Street and Round Lake Boulevard, and we did the Raising Cane on Northdale Blvd and Round Lake Boulevard. We're a developer based out of Fort Lauderdale, but we're very hands-on through entitlement, through construction. We were just in town 2 weeks ago to meet with city staff to discuss the traffic issue. We agreed right away to participate in funding
We agree with what's doing right for the city, what's doing right for our tenant, and more importantly, safety to the patrons of our tenants. So as much as we are on planes a lot, traveling across the country, our staff and our professionals are not. We hire local engineer, local architect. We use local brokers to lease the properties. We even borrow from local banks. So that's about One Corp. With me tonight, I have our architect, RSP, Bill and Elisa, Trish, our engineer, to answer any questions. We do have a material board with us, materials for the questions, so we're here to answer any questions.
I'd be interested in having you discuss your material board there.
Yeah, I'll give that over to Bill.
It's the best way to dispense. We can put it on.
Thank you, Anna.
I'll move over to the side here. I'm a little short to see over the top, sorry. But,
Can you name and address for the record, please?
yes, Bill Whitrock with RSP Architects. Our office is at 1220 Marshall Street in Northeast in Minneapolis. And I will say these, the project was designed to be viewed on all elevations. So these materials were selected to be visible from all sides, and the elevations would be compatible. So,
I can talk it out to no point.
okay. In your packet, there is a photograph representation of these same materials, and hopefully we can walk through this. So we approach this design with multiple colors based on the context of buildings around. There is brick on the number of buildings, so we included that as some of the feature materials. And then the base was, we used stone on the base to get the composition of stone, brick, and then lighter materials at the upper portion of the building. Those upper portions would be a wood grain fiber cement board. We would be using two different colors of stucco ephes. And in addition to the coloration of the ephes, the dark color ephes would have a pattern in it, which would have a horizontal nature. So we're utilizing materials, and we're also utilizing a pattern to give the building some texture. We think that this building's, because of the nature of their location on the site, close to the intersection and quite visible from the roadway, we'll have these quality materials on all four sides, along with some dark metal accents and dark metal eyebrows over the windows to give the building some differentiation in planes. Does that answer your concern, or do you have questions about more materiality?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
The red here, that'll be the dark maroon is the awning.
Oh, yes, that's correct. Fabric awning will be on the multi-tenant building, and we've chosen a accent, a red accent, because most of the colors have a warmish tone, but this would give it a very clear accent of where entrances and windows are.
Mr. Geisler?
Mr. Chair, just a question on the choice of coloration for awnings. Red is notorious for fading. What's the lifespan of that color hold on that material?
The fabric we've chosen is a Sunbrella fabric, and we've had good luck with that for maintaining its color for a good distance into the future. I don't have an exact year for that, but you're correct. Red does fade, but these are fabric awnings, and they can be replaced to be refreshed. I would say that these things would be relevantly colored for at least 5 years, hopefully 10 years. But Sunbrella is a reputable manufacturer that we have used on several projects and have had good luck with color retention.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any other presentation to make, or?
No, unless board has any more questions.
We may have more questions as we go then. All right, at this time, I will open a public hearing in planning case 19-26, a PUD amendment for a site plan consisting of a retail building and a bank at 3211 Northdale Boulevard. Anyone wish to speak at the public hearing? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Do we have a time frame of, first, when you're going to demolish the existing building and when you're going to start construction?
Yeah, we look for a favorable recommendation tonight, and then upon approval of the plans from the board in January, we would start construction documents immediately and look to start construction in the spring when the weather breaks. The restaurant would stay open until then. Once we had all permits in place, we would close on the property and then start construction. So I would say this spring, early this spring.
And do we have any idea who the restaurant might be?
We don't have a signed lease on any of the tenants. We're close. I'll be happy to share the tenants as soon as we have that available. I don't want to put the cart before the horse. But as soon as we have a signed lease and we have tenants online, we'd be happy to share that with staff to share with the commission.
Thank you.
We're trying to keep the local restaurants around.
I, for one, hate to see Famous Dave go. Commission, any comments, questions? Commissioner Geisler?
Sure. Mr. Harlicker, just refresh my memory, but I believe that this configuration in some way, shape, or form used to exist over in the corner of Round Lake and Main as well, with a bank and a veterinary clinic. Is that correct? It may have been multiple years ago. I believe it was actually replaced by the aforementioned dental in Panera.
It was a bank, Sterling Bank, and then it was redeveloped into the configuration that we have now.
Yeah, it was Wellhaven Pet over there at some
Yeah,
point?
that's there now.
They're
Oh, is
there
that there now? Okay,
That was the last building we just approved.
okay,
Chick-fil-A is right beside it in Mattress Firm.
right, yeah, okay. So we'd be looking at a potentially veterinary office clinic, but could also be any kind of clinic, correct? Okay. Just wondering what's nearby relative to this development. Thank you.
And Commission, comments, questions?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Casey?
my concern would be that traffic issue. But in good faith, I think you all, as an applicant and the city, have to come to a agreeable, configuration there. I see problems there, because it is problematic, intersection, but it's to the city's benefit, your benefit, to get that right, and that would be my concern. If this has to go to council, and so I'm sure they'll have something to say or, weigh in so that it's favorable to all of us who drive those roads, and use those properties, and it's traffic flow, for me. That's a block off of Main Street. It gets heavily used. It's on the way to Costco, that gets heavily used. So just setting that out there, but.
Yeah, no, we agree. We're well aware of the situation, and we agree to help the situation. We have no problem. We're agree to enter into a developer's agreement
Yep.
for the cost sharing. As I said before, it's in the best interest of our tenant to have that traffic situation resolved, and again, the safety of their patrons. So we're well aware of it, and we do intend to help make it better.
you'll be a good partner for the city then, as they keep a good eye on that too.
I'll say, like I said before, we do projects across the country, and I'd like to commend the staff here at the city of Coon Rapids. They've been very straightforward, very helpful, and are really great to work with.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have
Commissioner Casey,
follow-up
or
question.
excuse me, Commissioner Moki.
Yes, that's okay. Really quick, so you mentioned that the two driveways, the McDonald's driveway and this driveway, are going to be reconfigured so that they are aligned, right? Or that they're more in line with each other, correct?
Correct.
Right now, I know coming out of the existing parking lot where Famous Dave's is, there is kind of a blind on that from traffic coming in from the left, correct? So can you kind of talk to or speak to what exactly is changing so that, so that is, we understand the improvement? I was actually just thinking, assuming that that was going to be addressed, but since this was again brought up, I thought it's important to
I
maybe
think
ask
so.
what the plans are.
Fine.
I can speak a little bit to that. That was
Okay.
brought up in the study. We also contracted with SRF to do a traffic study as part of our application, and that came out of their study. We originally had the Famous Dave's driveway where it exists now, and it was recommended to move it to, we're not doing anything, the McDonald's driveway is staying where it is. We're moving our driveway to align it with McDonald's, which helps traffic and then helps that site distance issue as well.
So that actually shortens, though, that distance from Northdale to that driveway, correct? And are we concerned if we're putting in that right turn off of Northdale onto this street, or this driveway, I guess now, isn't that going to increase some of the risk with traffic coming out of this parking lot? I mean, that short distance, people coming in, can that introduce any more blind traffic? Are you following with what I'm saying? So we've got
Yeah.
and I'm speaking mainly from that right turn coming off of Northdale onto the existing drive, right?
I'll
And
have
with
my
the- yeah,
professional.
and with the short driveway then to the short drive to that new revised intersection then.
That's
Yeah.
existing here.
Yep. Good evening. I'm Trish C. with Kimley-Horn, civil engineer. 767 Eustis Street in St. Paul is the address. So to address your question, the existing driveway for Famous Dave's is right here. And part of why it is hard to see cars coming in, you've got a couple things in play. There's a trash enclosure right here for Famous Dave's, and there's a bunch of trees. And it's coming around a reasonably steep curve. So that's, I get exactly what your concern is. I've seen that, live in person. So that's why it's difficult right now. Part of the suggestion from the SRF traffic study that I agree with is actually if we move the driveway to line up with the McDonald's drive, albeit a little bit closer to the intersection, you've got more of a line of sight for cars coming in this way, and we're also eliminating the visual obstructions of the trash enclosure and the trees.
Okay.
And then the SRF study did look at cars queuing back at this intersection, such that the cars could still take a left out of here and it wouldn't, block up, freeze up that intersection.
Great, thank you.
Chair Schwartz.
Commissioner Knobloch.
Yeah, I just have to commend the applicant because I'm very familiar with this area and this site. And you had me very impressed with the development agreement with the city for the traffic flow, because there's also the freight exit for Menards, which is right beside where the exit for the old Dave's site is, and then the McDonald's exit. So the traffic flow, I think, will be addressed when the light and the traffic control is implemented, that the benefits to the entire site will be manifested. So commendations to the applicant for thoughtful analysis and review and working with the city on addressing the traffic issues. And that's all.
Commissioner Geisler, did you have something?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. To the comments on the driveway as well, I mean, there's also just a drainage pond there now, so the land goes down versus up with trees, and so that'll help there. This will be about as open of a corner as it gets, which is great from all aspects, from McDonald's, from Northdale, from Menards, all of it's actually much cleaner, open space. I'm also looking forward to much better striping in that space, because that's a 3-lane road with no indicators whatsoever right now. One thing I would encourage the applicant, since we're looking at sidewalks pretty much everywhere, that those, I believe it's probably 2 or 3 steps there to deal with about 2 feet of grading on the northwest corner of the multi-tenant building. If any of that could be converted into a ramp so it's easily ADA compliant. I know you have a ramp just south of there as well. But anything to make it easier to get up and down there for folks would be great, especially since you have a little bit of land there to work with if you could. I wouldn't consider it a requirement, but I think you're looking at sidewalk alignments anyway. I think that'd be a great way to do that. But yeah, all the way around, I think, you know, it's a tight space to work in. You've got a lot of challenging areas there, and it's well laid out for what you can do there.
Chair Schwartz.
Commissioner Knobloch.
I have one last statement, or one last question for Mr. Harlicker. On the landscape plan, the drainage pond, is that currently, is that not Famous Dave's? If you could clarify that for me.
I don't believe there's a pond there now. I'll let the applicant speak to that.
Just for clarification.
No, there's not a pond there right now. I don't know if I'm getting at what you're asking. Part of the northern part of the Famous Dave's building will be where part of the drainage pond is.
Thank you.
And it was brought up on the bike racks. Is there a bike rack at the bank?
Yes, there is. We're showing a couple bike racks right here. And in accordance with the comments, we'll add another bike rack probably up here, yep, by the proposed restaurant.
Thank you.
Chair, I do have a question of the applicant. Do you know, in your discussions with the possible tenants, would they be looking at any sort of outdoor seating?
The tenant we're talking with now is not interested in outdoor.
Okay.
Without going into specifics, can you say, is the tenant you're thinking of or that you're working with currently anywhere in the North Metro area? In Coon Rapids?
Yes.
Let's see if I can narrow it down any further.
Another question.
Commissioner Geisler.
Thank you, Chair. One final request to the applicant. Have you considered any EV chargers, especially at the bank site where you might have people who are there for a little longer period of time?
We have not.
Okay, I would just, remind your tenants, this is a sustainability program with the city that they can apply for to get placards, and there is currently money available from the MPCA to have some grant funds available coming up. That applications, I believe, open in January. So there is a way to get it a little bit cheaper, especially when you're going ground zero new construction. So I would encourage you to look into that.
We will look into that, thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Schmolke.
In planning case 19-26, I recommend approval of the PUD amendment and site plan with the conditions as stated in our packet.
Second.
Motion by Schmolke, second by Knobloch. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed. Motion passes. It's a recommendation by the planning commission and will be heard by the city council at their January 21st meeting. Good luck.
Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, moving on to other business.
material board is right.
Just hold on to it for the council.
Moving on to other business, Mr. Harlicker. Other business?
Some updates, we've got
Buildings going up, I'm sure you've noticed, and Main and Northdale at the Wells Fargo site. Work is progressing on the stationary apartments. I think they're hoping to get those open early spring, February maybe. Otherwise, it's wintertime and construction is kind of slowed down a little bit. I know Target submitted a building permit to renovate and rebrand the exterior of their building and do some interior renovations. They're looking at adding a liquor store to the facility. And
Which Target?
the one in Riverdale.
Okay.
And that's about it. We've got, well, 2 items now for January. Aerotech that was tabled and a conditional use permit for a church.
All right.
Mr. Chair Schwartz, I have a question for Mr.
Commissioner
Hardwick.
Knobloch.
Any development on the old Rainbow Foods gas car wash plot of land in front of Experience Fitness, I think it is, or the
Commissioner
old?
Nothing.
Nothing,
You get a
okay,
phone call every once in a while, but nothing's been proposed.
okay. And then any murmurs on the Sears building?
No murmurs,
No?
no word, no whispers.
My standard monthly question.
Yep.
Yes. Thank you.
Anyone else? Motion?
I would move to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Motion by Casey, second by Knobloch. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting's adjourned.